So I think we are ready to start now, and I'm honored to present the first lecture by Primitiva Bueno Ramirez about Megaliths au centre de la peninsula Iberic, or something like that.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to start by thanking the organization for inviting me to present a view of megaliths in the interior of the Iberian Peninsula. I apologize for my English, but I will do my best to be understood. An indication of change in the present knowledge, it is precisely the opening of a presentation about the Iberian Peninsula in this session. 20 years ago, this would have been unthinkable. Only two focus were recognized, the West represented by Portugal and the East represented by Los Millares. Megaliths in the center were known as the result of an expansion either from the West or from the East. Our aim with my colleague Rosa Barroso and Rodrigo de Balbin, our aim in this presentation is to prove that the area we are talking about has its own architectural style distinguishable from other areas of the Iberian Peninsula. Duero and Tajo basins have many megaliths of big stones, apart from tumulus without megalithic chambers. Stone monuments have the uprights one close to the other, differing from the Occidental constructions in which orthostats were leaning against each other. This situation is similar in Rioja Alavesa, Rioja Aragonesa, and Beira, and some megaliths from Cáceres and Badajoz and Andalusia can be added in this group. But we are going to concentrate the case study in the most emblematic area in peninsular center, so-called the meseta, the plateau. It has good cultivable land, and it is also a sector with easy access from the Iberian Peninsula apart from the Atlantic, Mediterranean, and Pyrenean routes. In the 80s, new interpretations and new data began to be proposed. The documentation of inhabited area of the first producer demonstrates the classical Neolithic package in the center of the Iberian Peninsula. The landscape of the 6th millennium is very similar to that of the 5th millennium Cal BC. The megaliths were built on top the site of the first producer. Therefore, the megaliths are the most visible element from the Neolithic. In the present situation of our knowledge, we can confirm that there is a pre-megalithic Neolithic, same as all the Atlantic European facets and other classical areas of the Iberian megalithic. The denial of this pre-megalithic Neolithic points out the alleged population and economic lacking in the Atlantic region. The discussions about mobility of producer group were based on the alleged agricultural incapacity of these groups. Nowadays, we know that wheat agriculture has been known of and practiced since the 6th millennium Cal BC. The lands in which the megalithic builders settle are especially fertile and appropriate for incipient agriculture. Deep soils and places with water are the chosen ones. Villafáfila, a valley with villages, megalithic monuments, and Sal of Huecas or Huecas Valley in the south of Meseta with a similar sequence, and the Ambrona valley, which has a sequence of all Neolithic and megalithic constructors. They insist on the value of important lake areas in the plateau in the election of human settlement. The plan of stone architecture is a circular chamber from 9 to 14 uprights and a passage with 2, 3, or more orthostats. Circular chambers propose a discussion about the covering due to the important length of the diameter, 5 meters, or sometimes even more. It is possible they were covered by a big stone, sure, but it's probable that there were different solutions. For example, one stone on top of another, a style reminiscent to that of continental architecture like Bardenés. Some monuments from the north of the Meseta, like Huidobro or Cubillejo de Lara, for example, show superimposed stone bones that point towards that direction. If we review non-stone architecture, the image is similar and even clearer. A vaulted roof of clay and small stone, like the one in the chamber of Castillejo, or just of small stone, as it is proposed by the researchers of the chamber of Peña de la Abuela here. The mounds of stone chambers were reinforced with 3 retaining rings. Between them, distances are similar, about 1 meter, and the stone filling is very compact. The repetition of measurements supports the hypothesis of building modules, maybe specialized people in this kind of construction. It is interesting that the system we are describing is similar to the tumulus in Los Millares, but the chronology is much older in the interior than in the famous southeast Iberian site. Stone chambers and tumulus without big stone are basically contemporary in the origin. They have the same great goods, lithic objects, especially microliths, and polished axes, necklaces, and pottery. They both have the same anthropomorphic figurines, San Martín, El Miradero, spatulas. The persistence of microliths is very noticeable. They were used at the same time of there were arrowheads, as we know, in the other areas of the Iberian Peninsula or in inhabited areas of the same region. Therefore, microliths are a traditional expression of lithic groups in the center of the Iberian Peninsula. Great goods reproduce an ideal world where every varied person, being man, woman, or children, is associated with pointed elements. And this has been this way since the oldest megaliths to the most recent ones. The image of warriors applied to a bell beaker is not new. The varied ancestors in megaliths are drawn in the same way. The anthropomorphic figures dated between the 5th and 4th millennium at the Meseta or also antecedents for some reference of Millares, schematic face, breasts, and circles carved in relief over long bones. Again, they reproduce old tradition with a clear importance in the ritual production from the interior of the peninsula. We have to point out that these pieces poses interesting reference in context of European Neolithic, like the ones with long bones that accompany some burials of Danube, published by Jeunesse. 2 case studies serve as example for the architecture we want to describe, the Azutan dolmen and the Castillejo tumulus, both in Toledo. Azutan is a monument of chamber and passage built over a level of occupation previous to the one in which we identify a hut. The oldest date of the use of honey in Europe comes from it. Human remains allowed us to date different funerary occupations, accompanied by microlith, polished axe, and flat and decorated pottery. The powerful stone mound was built in a very compact way. It includes 3 lines of granite orthostat, between them a quartzite pebble filling and slabs of slate with a 20-meter diameter and 2-meter height, which is preserved today. El Castillejo is an example of a tumulus without a structure of big stones, like the one or Peña de la Abuela, La Velilla, Miradero, etc. in the north of the meseta. A circular chamber with 3 meters of diameter was delimited by small stone. A possible assembly of clay and small stone is deduced by the sediment of this kind that appear on the top of the excavation. 17 corpses, mostly young men, were found in what seems to be a singular burial. Microliths, laminates, San Martin al Miradero spatulas are grey goods identical to those of which are dated in the 5th millennium CalBC in the monuments mentioned from the north. The dates we have correspond to the last burials located in the entrance of the chambers in the first half of the 3rd millennium CalBC. A Belviker burial with 2 corpses was attached through a microtolus in the southeast of the old chamber. We can assure a long constructive tradition in this area. Again, we are going to choose 2 case studies, one in the north of Meseta, Sima, in the river Duero, and the other in the south, TUH. They have 2 masonry chambers of small stones, in which clay has the same role. They both have C14 chronology from the first half of 4th millennium CalBC. Therefore, we think that the tholoi from the southeast aren't the origin of the interior constructions. The traditional assumptions that the relation with los millares isn't necessary to explain this kind of architecture. It even seems convincing that it is the constructive tradition of stone monuments from the interior that contributed to define the architectural modules extended through the southeast throughout the 3rd millennium CalBC. We are lacking some dates from the tholoi of the southwest, like Rodrigo Valley or La Barca, which have asymmetrical oblong chambers like the one in Azutan, and they have roofs covered with medium-sized stones overlapping each other. Megalithic art is a constant of these monuments. It is very abundant in similar architecture in Portugal, apart from the ones in the Meseta, like better-known cases Azutan, Huidobro, Navalcán, or La Estrella. The reutilization of pieces stands out, as it happens in the menhir of Navalcán Dolmen. Nowadays, during the last year, many cases are being documented which propose that menhirs were the first constructions dedicated to ancestors. Some of them may have been the origin of the construction of dolmens, but we also have evidence in Andalusia and Extremadura which suggests that some megalithic monuments were built with stones from other monuments of the area. Perhaps Navalcán corresponds to this situation, or the builders recovered materials from another type of monument formed by menhirs. There are 3 pieces of them that have survived, and they are menhirs or fragments of menhirs. The association between geometrical patterns has been very widely used along all Atlantic megalithic art, and human figures of schematic Iberian art are an element very indicative of the connection between the funerary ideology with the open-air art expression. The old chronology of Iberian megalithic art constitutes a basic argument to value the ideological interaction associated to Atlantic megalithisms since at least the 5th millennium Cal BC. Other new in the recently obtained records is the power of the last megalithism in the area. On the one hand, traditional graves are still being built, with tumulus without stone architecture. On the other hand, apart from the masonry monument pointed out already, there is an abundance of apogeal architectures totally unprecedented. Our first research in the necropolis, in the necropolis of Higueras Valley revealed this situation since the year 2000. We then proposed that the old descriptions of the Cienpozuelos necropolis had been wrongly interpreted. They described chambers with several graves and bell-beaker ceramics, but they were valued as individual bell-beaker burials, and they served to define the Cienpozuelos style. The apogeal graves were characterized by being excavated on limestone from the area and were completed with masonry and clay. And very soon, other colleagues have located similar structures in the area of Madrid. They include collective graves. Many of them have bell-beaker grave goods. The Higueras Valley necropolis, like the others that had been documented in the center, opens a door that leads to a wide number of reflections about the univocal relation between bell-beaker and individual burials, which is very similar to what happens in other European areas. The reiteration of the use of vaulted chambers, the use of clay and small stone in construction point towards reminiscence the oldest tumulus without stone architecture. The capacity of exchange shown in these graves is very important. Amber adornments, varicite, marine beads, copper, ivory, and gold. The collective grave goods in the 3rd millennium reveal a high level of economical and social escalation, a level that in this interior area had only been recognized on individual graves with a bell-beaker. And the test done on some ceramics confirm a ritual of food and beverage that we have documented on other megaliths like in the one in Extremadura. The chronology of these burials, the ritual, and the amount of buried people assure the long diachrony of funeral system of megalithic origin. It also propose interpretation about the bell-beaker ritual that is included in traditional behavior. More than a break in pattern, these graves show us an assimilation and evolution in a chronological range very centered in the second half of the 3rd millennium Cal BC. The chronology of the old phase of megaliths from the interior confirms the second half of the 5th millennium Cal BC. Some has to house the remains of ancient ancestor EMS date of human bones made in Azutan or Castillejo point in that directions. The issue is not new to European megaliths, and similar explanations have been proposed for the old chronology of some bones of the necropolis of Bougon, France. The inclusion of anthropomorphic stone like the menhirs of Navalcan from all monuments probably has a connection with the inclusion of all the human remains. Both respond to the same mechanic of exhibition of the past as an ideological system. The C14 series of Wiccas assures the consolidation of the Belbikers and Pozuelos in chronologies that are very similar to the ones detected in other European countries, and especially it assures the insertion in the traditional places associated with death. The ancestors still have an important visible social role in funerary rituals. The synchrony between the described burials and some of the culminating monuments of the Iberian megalithic groups, for example, Andalusia, Alentejo, or Algarve, that other colleague will describe later, confirms the singularity of cultural solution in the interior, the relation with their own architectural style, apart from the importance in other areas. It's not easy to determine the end of megalithism in the interior, given that some structures receive burials on the second half of the 3rd millennium Cal BC, and even the 2nd millennium Cal BC. But it does seem clear that there is an evolution towards the conceptualization of deposit that end up establishing as standard repertoires. A good example of this is the Belbiker package. This will be the summary of the ancestors, containers, adornments, and weapons like those of the old megaliths, but with the typical typologies of Belbiker. The old ancestors that were imagined to be warriors or hunters were reinterpreted as the new warriors of hunter, associated with metal and sumptuous objects that revealed their ability to obtain the prestigious elements. The interior of the Iberian Peninsula joins favorable conditions for all agriculture and farming, sources of salt, silex and bauxite, and the possibility of extraction of copper and gold. Its position in last peninsular prehistory has to be supervised completely, because the majority of the interpretations have been done without archaeological basis. The ones we present here point towards their role in the revitalization of relationships between different peninsular areas due to easy access with characterize them, apart from bigger interest matters as the evidence of the all bolted solutions, the consolidation of all chronologies for Belbiker style, and the power of traditional components in the ancestor development. Thank you.